What's up, everyone? This is Noah Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston after the Celtics get back in the win column with a 136-107 win. And I am so relieved because it was getting really hard to come up with positive takeaways after these last two home losses. We had the Houston Rockets game. With that one, I felt like I was able to draw out some positive things because Baylor Shireman had the best game that he's had so far this season. Jordan Walsh broke through a little bit, and ultimately it was the second night of a back-to-back, so how upset can you be? But the Utah Jazz loss, I did a pod, I talked about the positive takeaways, but it was hard. It was hard to spin that one. It was hard to even pull positive things. And I'm not trying to spin the games. I shouldn't even say that, because ultimately what I'm trying to do is talk about what I'm seeing on the floor and what I'm seeing that is encouraging and what I'm seeing that is encouraging both for the short term and also the long term, because ultimately the long term is what I know most of you guys care most about. So it's the Washington Wizards. I'll say that first and foremost. I'm not going to act like that is the most important game of the year, and it's certainly not indicative of what these teams are going to match up with every single night with better teams on the other side of the aisle. But what I will say is that you saw tonight several career performances from guys on this team. I'll start with number one, and I think this is a guy that's gotten a lot of coverage so far this season, and rightfully so. Josh Minott. Josh Minott had 21 points tonight. That is his career high. He's now started 6 games, and the Celtics are 4-2 when he starts, so the results are there. And Minott is somebody that I've really enjoyed covering so far this season. Yesterday, I was at the YMCA at an event that he was just the star of the show, hanging out with the kids, talking about how much he loves the city of Boston. And there's been the off-court stuff that I think he's really connected with the fans. He's enjoyed leaving his house and going to restaurants and exploring the city. And he's just really embracing what it means to be a Celtic. And then there's the on-court stuff where he's just completely slotted into the fifth starter role that a lot of us were wondering, is that going to be Sam Hauser? Is that going to be Chris Boucher? It's been him, and he's been really good at it, and he's been rebounding the ball exceptionally well. He's been defending at a higher rate than anybody has seen him defend in the NBA. I've talked to people back in Minnesota that they did not see this coming. Luka Garza, his Minnesota Timberwolves teammate who now is a Celtic with him, also said, this is another gear for him. So it's been awesome to see him do all the other things, defend, rebound, be a great team player, really work off the crowd. I think he's maybe at the top of the list of new guys that has just embraced the fan base and all of that. But at the end of the day, this team has really struggled to score the ball. And entering tonight, they were one of the lowest scoring teams in the NBA. And yes, you have Jaylen Brown, but one of the crazy stats that I found, this morning when I was just Googling stuff, is that this Celtics team is the only team in the NBA that had only one guy averaging more than 15 points per game, and that was Jaylen. And so they need points, they need baskets, they need guys hitting threes. And in this game, Josh Minott hits 3 of 6 3-point attempts, and I still think the three-point shooting is an open question. I'm not sure how he's going to shoot when it's all said and done. But he hit 2 big ones late in the first quarter, and I genuinely believe they lose this game if Josh Minott doesn't hit those threes, because it was a double-digit deficit, and that's when you're kind of at a make-or-break moment. Are the Wizards going to pull away? Now you're down by 20, and you need to figure out a way to claw back into it, and you may or may not be able to do that. Or are you staying, within 8 points, and now all it takes is a couple of stops and a couple of threes, and you're winning? And that's what happened. And he hit 2 big threes when they were really struggling to score. So objectively, this was probably the Josh Minott game. And he's had some great moments so far this season. And the great part about this is they have him on a 2-year deal. So next year, when Tatum's back and Jaylen's back, Jaylen's been playing great, but they have their real core together and they're going to make another run at a title next year, presumably, Josh Minott's going to be on this team on a minimum deal, and he is going to be a critical part of this group. I really think that. Is he going to still start when Tatum comes back? I don't know, probably not, but he's going to be a rotation player for this team. And right now, there's still a lot of uncertainty about who's who and how good this team's going to be, but I feel pretty good about the fact that they found him as a guy that can be a part of the future as well as the short term. So huge shout out to him tonight. I loved hearing what he had to say post-game. Check out his full interview on CLNS Media, because he's just so likable, so authentic. He starts every press conference being like, oh, my favorite people, not. He kind of has this sense about him where he's super personable and authentic. But he also talked a lot about how much he's loved the city, how much he's not taking this opportunity for granted. And though he started the last 6 games, he knows that could change at any given moment, and he plays like it. He literally plays like every possession could be his last, and it's been really fun to watch. Probably my favorite player on the team to watch right now, and you guys know that there's some players on this team that I've followed for a long time and have thoroughly enjoyed covering. So That's my number one positive takeaway, is that he's a player that is impacting winning right now, but also has a role to play long-term with this group, and for sure next year, but we'll see about the future after that. The second thing I wanted to talk about is Jaylen Brown, who at this point, we know Jaylen. I don't think there should have ever been any doubts about what he can do entering this season, because he's, as we know, multiple-time All-Star, Finals MVP, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He's delivered in the biggest moments on the brightest stages. And yet, something about Jaylen Brown, there's always this uncertainty around him. There's always this criticism, or like, can he do it? The criticism has not been quelled through 9 games, because this team is 4-5, and I think what everybody wants to see is, can he lead a team to winning? And that remains a question, and I think that extends far beyond him, because as I mentioned, he's going to need guys around him to play well as well. But tonight, first quarter, as I mentioned, they could not get anything going, and he kept them in it. He had 18 points in that first quarter, finishes the game with 35 points in just 25 minutes of action. It's the first time in Celtics history that somebody has scored 35 points in just 25 minutes. So that's pretty impressive. And it's not just the scoring. He had 5 assists in this one, and I would say multiple really good passes that did not result in assists because the guy missed, or it was a hockey assist. So if you're just watching him play right now, I don't really care about what the assist numbers say. He's playing a good floor game. Like, he is, playmaking. He is looking to play make. And I've mentioned this before on this podcast, but it's really obvious to me that he's getting a kick out of assists more than anything else right now. He had been struggling with his shot the previous 2 games. I almost worried that I jinxed him, because I asked him in Philadelphia about the shooting, and he mentioned, I'm just looking for my shot more. And when you're confident and when you're hunting your own 3-ball, your shot's going to fall at a higher rate. Every shooter knows that. He missed 11 straight threes right after I asked him that. So I was like, oh God, I jinxed Jaylen. But tonight he comes out, is 2 of 4 from 3, but probably more important is that he only took 4 because he was getting to his spots. And he talked post-game about how the Celtics sent some clips in the offseason to the NBA about just him drawing fouls in the mid-range, and that guys are just guarding him to the point where he's rising up and he's getting contact, and he wants to get to the line on that play. And he said last year they weren't calling that a defensive foul. They were either not calling it or they were calling it an offensive foul. This year they've been calling it, and so he's been getting to the line at a high clip. He's been shooting the ball well from the free throw line, so that's been important as well. But this team has been near the bottom, if not the worst team as far as getting to the line. So the fact that they have one guy that can get to the line at will has been really, really important. So Jaylen Brown, another big night for him. It's been night after night after night. He has been the engine of this team's offense, and he's shouldering a lot of other responsibilities as well, as I mentioned, from a playmaking standpoint, from a ball handling standpoint. He's handling the ball more than he has in previous years, and then on the defensive end as well. So they have a smaller margin of error on that end with so many guys out of the lineup and just playing a different, more scrambling system that we've talked about quite a bit. So the good news with Jaylen, I think people kind of maybe overlooked that he got hurt in the last preseason game of the season and dealt with that tweaked hamstring, and he wants to play every single night. He's made that very clear. Second night of a back-to-back, dealing with a hamstring injury. Jaylen still played against that Pelicans team. They got their first win. And I think he's going to aim to play all 82 if he's able to. I think he wants to accomplish a lot individually this season, but more importantly, he wants this team to be good. He has not shown an inkling of thinking, you know what, this team's probably going to suck anyways. Let me just get my points and get some rest, and we'll be back next year. He wants to show he's a competitor, and he wants to showcase that what they have here is enough, and he wants to make the playoffs, make a run. He told Celtics social media that his goal for the season is for them to be back in the finals. That's the team goal. And his individual goal is to make an all-defense team. And I think that he's played with a lot of hunger so far, and he's been super, super efficient, one of the most efficient scorers in the league, and he's a top 5 scorer in the NBA right now as far as total points go. So that's great to see. And just another night where he can pretty much get what he wants whenever he wants it. And the Wizards certainly had no answer for Jaylen Brown. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is as fun as it gets. Right now, Drake May is the player that I would say, more on his rushing yards, more on his passing yards. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you can cash in. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. PrizePicks also offers injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks won't count it as a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. So before the break, I mentioned two guys that were critical to tonight's win. Josh Minott, who was a minimum signing that we didn't really know what we were going to get out of Josh Minott, and so far he's been a pleasant surprise. And then Jaylen Brown, who I think there should have been very little doubt about what he was going to bring to the Celtics this season. And here he is putting together a very, very nice season so far. I mean, it's only been 9 games, but he has looked every bit the part of a primary option offensively. Besides those two guys, there were a couple of guys that I think had career nights tonight, and I don't know if the stats are going to say this, but Jordan Walsh, in my opinion, had the best game of his NBA career. Jordan has pretty much been out of the rotation for most of the season. He's been maybe the least played guy. You know, him, Chris Boucher's gotten some DNPs as well, but there have been some games where Jordan Walsh has been the only guy that didn't see the floor. And third year in the league, there's a lot of pressure. You know, his contract's not even fully guaranteed until January. You know, his future hangs in the limbo. Like, he doesn't know exactly where things are headed, and I can only imagine how much pressure you're under as a third-year NBA player that doesn't know if you're going to get a second NBA deal. And Jordan Walsh is very much kind of within that group right now. Tonight, he was part of the turnaround. You know, they started that second quarter, they're down by double digits, and by the end of that quarter, they're up by double digits, and it was just a complete swing, 44-point second quarter. A lot of it was done on the defensive end, playing some active defense, getting some deflections. He racks up a steal, a couple of defensive rebounds, finishes this game with 7 points and 7 rebounds. But really what stood out to me was that he was a plus 27 in his minutes, and that's critical, that he contributed to winning in this one. And I asked Joe Mazzulla about Jordan Walsh's performance.
And then Jordan was part of that group in the beginning of the second quarter that seemed to kind of turn the game around. What did you see out of him?
Yeah, I thought he was great tonight. I thought just both ends of the floor. His presence defensively, his rebounding, his positioning. He's got good defensive instincts. I thought he played really well. And I thought, I think our defense changed it, but I also think he sparked the change in the game tonight, just because of the way he played. It's a credit to him, just staying ready, making sure he's ready at any time.
A lot of times I always like asking about the guys that maybe are going to get overlooked in the storyline. You know, everybody's going to talk about Jaylen, everybody's going to talk about Jason historically. But I've always, since I started covering this team, I've always wanted to ask about, Jordan Walsh and Baylor Shireman and J.D. Davison, and like almost to the point where I know some people kind of make fun of me, like, oh, it's almost a shtick. But the reality is that I think that these guys have the potential to either impact winning or not at all. And sometimes the difference between that is really hard to tell. Like, a guy might play for 5 minutes and do nothing, and a guy might play for 5 minutes and their stat sheet might not say much, but they actually were on all the right spots and did all the right things. And tonight I felt like Jordan, I should say, did everything right in that second quarter stint and was critical. Joe said it himself. He sparked that turnaround. The defense sparked it, but so did Jordan. And so does this mean that Jordan Walsh now is going to be playing 20 minutes a night the rest of the year? No, it doesn't mean that. We've already seen that different guys have had different moments so far this season. Baylor's had his moments. Ugo's had his moments. Now Jordan's had his moments. Like, that's going to continue to be the case. But at the end of the day, these are the 3 guys they drafted in the past 3 years. And they chose all those guys for a reason, and all of them also fell to the late first round, or in Jordan's case, early second round, for a reason. Like, there are flaws to their game. There are fundamental reasons why they were not lottery picks, right? And when you draft in that range, there's a lot of uncertainty about what you're going to get. And so we've already seen Ugo isn't really promising in his, 19 years old, has impacted the game defensively, has shown some kind of a beyond his years defensive instinct. I thought he had some really good moments tonight as well, though he's not the story tonight, but he had some good deflections, some good, hustle plays. But Jordan needed a game like this, and it came at a great time. It's still early in the season. He's not ridden off. A lot of people, I think, have buried him and said, Ugo's kind of the better version of him, and Ugo's looked better than him so far this season, but he impacted winning tonight. He hit his 3 late in the game. I think that's a result of impacting the game and feeling confident and all of that. So I say this all the time, but a lot of people want to write off guys like Baylor or Jordan, say, they're not NBA players, they haven't impacted winning yet. But the reality is that they're under contract and they're on cheap contracts because they're rookies. And the Celtics are going to need those guys to hit. Not every single one of them, but they're going to need some of those guys to hit in order to remain where they want to be both this year and in the future. So I'm not writing off Jordan Walsh. I'm not writing off Baylor Shireman. They each have things that have done well and not so well, but tonight was Jordan's night, and it's really encouraging that despite all the DNPs and all of that, that he is still locked in and he stayed ready. And when Joe called his number, then at the beginning of that second quarter, could have been anybody. It could have been Chris Boucher, who didn't play tonight. Could have been a number of guys. But he gives Jordan an opportunity, and Jordan absolutely delivered. So big shout out to him. And then the fourth thing that I wanted to highlight in this game was Neemias Queta, who, again, I said this from the beginning of the season, he's the X factor for this team. And Josh was great tonight, and we're not going to get 21 points from Josh every single night. But Queta has been the best net rating player on this team. To me, they've been a different team when he's off the floor, and that's with all of the faults that he's had. He has not had a perfect season. I would like to see him have less moving screens and maybe less fouls and better positioning on the glass, and obviously costly play there at the end of that Jazz game where Nurkic gets the game winner because he wasn't in the right rebounding position. All that being said, Queta's been really good this year, and I think he deserves his flowers as a guy who was a fourth center last year, who has never really played consistent NBA minutes. He comes in this year and he's the starting center on a team with championship expectations where there's going to be a ton of scrutiny and very little margin of error. And one thing to Joe Mazzulla's credit, he's made very clear that Queta is shouldering a ton of responsibilities on both ends of the floor, both rebounding wise, defensively in the scheme. There's not a lot of margin of error. There's nobody behind you, right? Like if you're a guard that messes up and you're the guy who blows past you, there's another layer of protection. If you're Queta, that's it, so he's shouldering a lot of responsibilities on that end as well. Tonight, big time game, 15 points on 7 of 7 shooting. He grabs 12 rebounds, 4 of which are offensive, 5 assists. I love the 5 assist number because that shows you that he's kind of being a connective piece on offense, and they're playing through him. Like, he's not just out there. Offensively, he's shouldered a big role, and I'd like to see that continue. I asked him about a post game, but I want to see them continue to look for him offensively. I want to see him continue to be a lob threat because this offense is not the most dynamic. We knew that heading into the season, that they were down quite a bit of personnel, but they do have one guy, multiple guys, but Queta really is, the 7-footer on the roster that can roll to the basket. And he said it himself when I asked him about a post game. It's not just about actually getting the ball and scoring, but it's about attracting defenders because right now everybody knows this team wants to shoot a lot of threes. Everybody knows that Anthony Simons, Derek White, Payton Pritchard, they've made a lot of money at the three-point line, and so teams are trying to take that away and make that difficult and make them, take difficult shots. And so Queta being a guy that can give you 12, 14 points on a given night, tonight 15 points, is really great. And so, again, they played the Wizards tonight. This Wizards front court has led up a lot of big-time performances on the other end. So it's not like this was a breakthrough game against the most formidable defense in the NBA. But at the end of the day, a win's a win, and they needed this one badly. You don't want to have a 3-game losing streak right after winning 3 games when you started 0-3 on the season. And they improved to 4-5. And again, when Queta plays like he did tonight, I think this is a good basketball team. I think this is a playoff team. And when he struggles, they're not. And so I don't want to oversimplify it. There's obviously a lot of guys in the roster. There's a lot of different things going on the floor. I rewatch every game like 3 times because every time I watch the game, I watch for something different. But tonight in the real-time watch, and I'll definitely go back and see what more there is to see from this one. But in the real-time watch, it was very obvious that they were a better basketball team when he was on the floor, and that's been the case all season long. And I want to see the guards continue to look for him. I want to see Payton Pritchard and Derek White and Jaylen Brown, the guys that have the ball in their hand, continue to look for Queta because he's open. He's open a decent amount, and I think that there have been some times early this season where they've missed him, and some of that's just chemistry and just kind of as they get more familiar with him, we'll continue to see that click. So that's my fourth kind of positive takeaway from this one. I'm trying to think if I missed anything else. I mean, obviously the win is the most important thing because right now wins have been hard to come by, and especially after 2 bad losses at home, one a blowout loss to the Rockets and then a heartbreaking finish to the Jazz. I guess the last thing that I'll just mention is I know Payton Pritchard has got a lot of flack as being the starting guard. A lot of people want to see Anthony Simons take that role. I think Pritchard's continued to play really well, and he talked post-game about how he feels like he settled a little bit in second halves, taking more threes than he should. Tonight, he has 18 points on 7 of 12 shooting, and the key for him has been that he's just attacking. He's not just settling for those threes. The three-point shot is going to come around. He's a really good three-point shooter. That's a proven thing. But besides for the three-point shooting, he's been able to be really consistent inside the arc, and he was shooting about 65% heading into tonight for 2-point shots. And so that's great to see. That's something that is sustainable. That's something that if that can be scaled and that can continue when Tatum comes back and when they have more weapons offensively, it's just going to make him that much harder to guard. So I still think Pritchard's going to have a great season. He's the second leading scorer on this team so far. And the three-point shot is going to come around. It already started to a little bit in these last few games, and when that happens, you're going to see him routinely put up 18, 20 points a game. So far, he's kind of become increasingly more consistent here these past few games. So other guys deserve shout-outs. Anthony Simons catches a rhythm late in the game. I think in general, you saw great ball movement in that second quarter. They finally hit some threes. That's the most important thing, Joe will tell you. So all that's great. And again, not against the best competition here, but every team can beat any team in this league, and we saw that with the Utah game. I think maybe they took that win for granted, or maybe we did, but they get back in the win column here. Celtics will head to Orlando for 2 games. Every year they have one city that they go to for 2 games, and this year it's Orlando, so I'll be there. We'll have coverage on the ground, and then they come back to Philadelphia where they were last week. So another 3-game road trip coming up. They're 1-2 on this homestand, so it's not great, but that Rockets game was probably a loss, so they split the more winnable games here. So they're 4-5, big blowout win here, lots to love. I would say Josh, Minott, Neemias Queta, and Jordan Walsh may have had the best games of their career all in one night, so that's super encouraging. Jaylen Brown continues to dominate and kind of lead the way for this team, and Payton Pritchard continues to establish himself as a really good lead guard for this roster. So still a lot of room for improvement. I still think Derek White hasn't found his groove quite yet, but he looked better tonight than he did against Utah, so that's one more positive thing. That's it for now. Thank you as always for watching. Be sure, if you want to hear the players talk in their own words, Jaylen Brown spoke after this one, Payton Pritchard did, Neemias Queta, Josh Minott, all the top performers spoke after this win, so go check them out in their own words on CLNS Media, and go watch our post-game show as well, and we'll have more coverage coming up from the road.